Welcome to my first tutorial about the softsynth Ommarunn. It's, well, yes, it's the most extraordinary and even strangest softsynth I've ever worked with. And it's not only its hieroglyphic user interface spec with legion of functions what might make you tremble and run away from it. But I tell you, don't do that. Don't run away from Ommarunn. Stay, it's worth it. And even if there is a certain learn curve, you'll be happy about every minute you have spent with this softsynth. Let me help you. Let me usher you in. Come and enter the world of a completely different approach to sound design. The initial status, the initial, let me call it preset, after loading Ommarunn into your DAWs is silent. Well, you say, and after a while you grasp, that none of the 6 oscillators is turned on. Okay, let's activate oscillator 1 then, but Ommarunn stays silent. Every oscillator has got 6 waveforms or 6 generators: sine, triangle, saw, square, additive and noise. At least one of them has to be turned on as well, of course, and 5 of the 6 volume knobs are bipolar, with their 0 position in the middle. And as we see, they are at middle position, their output level is 0. Let's turn up the sine wave. And we get a sound at last. The minus and plus values of the output represent different phase angles. As long as there is only one generator and only one oscillator playing, there isn't any difference between plus and minus, between turning the knob from the middle to the right or to the left. But when I activate a second oscillator and switch one of the 2 oscillators to plus maximum and the other to minus maximum, the sine waves with a phase shift of 180 degrees cancel each other out. I changed the panorama settings of both oscillators. Oscillator 1 shall send its output to the left stereo channel and oscillator 2 to the right stereo channel. The oscillator shows what's going on now. The blue curve is the sine wave coming from oscillator 1, and the green curve is the wave from oscillator 2. We see the phase shift of 180 degrees now, which would lead to phase cancellation if both waves were sent to the same stereo channel. The little knob to the left of the 5 waveforms is also concerned with the phase of the wave, but as this tutorial number 1 is meant to give you an overview and orientation in this jungle of knobs, I'll deal with the details of those little knobs in the next video. Let me rather show you the other waveforms and their spectra. The sine wave is a quite clear one. But when we want to play chords, the wave distorts quite fast. It is better, therefore, to turn down the volume of the generator a bit and turn up the volume at your DAW. This distortion phenomenon doesn't always occur. I haven't discovered yet any specific situation when the sine distorts, but just do as I suggested and there won't be any problems. The triangle isn't as susceptible to distortion as the sine wave. Well, let's go for the saw wave now, and voila! Isn't that a nice and clean saw wave? Yes, it's digital, no analog warmth, but Ommarunn is a digital synth, and that wonderfully clean saw wave can perfectly serve as the basis of a lot of great sounds, as we will see later. And the square wave. The additive generator is specific in that I can draw the partials which this generator shall generate, and just a quick tip, you can capture nice motions of sound when you record while you are drawing, deleting and redrawing these partials. White noise at last. Okay, it's time to know about some basic control functions. Left-clicking on a parameter and moving the mouse adjusts its value. Of course, what else? Shift plus left-click enables you to adjust the value more precise as it works with an increased resolution. And I bet you'll use this increased resolution quite often. The right-click option is special. It concerns randomization. I'm going to talk about the manifold randomization functions later. Right now, there shall be said only that right-clicking a parameter excludes this parameter from randomization. Right-clicking it a second time re-includes it again. If there is a blue circle around the parameter, it is included in, and if not, it is excluded from randomization. And if you hold the control key while right-clicking, you randomize the individual parameter only, without changing any other of the parameters. You surely will have noticed that hovering your mouse over a parameter lifts the secret of its mystical abbreviations by showing the parameter's full name in the center display above. It is time to discover the global structure of the user interface. There are 6 identical oscillators. Above the left oscillator section, there are 3 groups of global controls called MIDI, envelope, and global. On the right side, above oscillator 5, there are the functions to save and load presets. Loading a preset takes a time. You have to be a bit patient. On the left of Save and Load, there is the global random function, which includes all parameters of Ommarunn, which are not excluded by right-clicking, of course. As there are so many parameters to randomize, we have to be patient again. And there are Reset and Initialize. The Initialize function resets the whole VST to the state we got at the beginning, right after loading it into the DAW. Silence all over the place. Do you remember? And again, initializing takes a second or two. The reset function resets audio only. This is very useful to tell Ommarunn, shut up, when you are proceeding a sound which doesn't want to stop after getting a MIDI note off message and seems to go on and on and on endlessly. Here is an example. At first without clicking reset and then using reset to stop Ommarunn messing around. Down under the oscillators, there is the effect section with phase, tremolo, flanger, reverb, and delay. And to the right of the effects, we find the filter with low pass, high pass, band pass, and notch. Right to the filter section, there is a couple of functions called output math. Wonderful possibilities to manipulate the sound, but far too detailed a thing to talk about in this first video of my series about Ommarunn. I'll leave the knobs untouched today, untouched but for a short demonstration. And, at last, there is the main output section with master volume, master compression, and some additional functions to be talked about later as well. Alright, so far the GUI's main sections. It's time for making some first sounds of our own to learn more about the oscillators and their functionality. There is a principle to grasp, a principle which is valid for nearly every parameter, and this principle reads: no parameter comes alone. Every parameter is accompanied by a couple of modulators. I take a saw wave and want to send it through a low-pass filter. I activate oscillator 1 and turn the saw wave generator up to 100%. I go to the filter window of the oscillator and choose a low-pass filter. With the knob right to the filter window, I set the cutoff frequency. The full name of the knob is Filter Pitch Track. Please don't get puzzled about that. Then I adjust the filter resonance. The name of this knob is Filter Resonance LFO Center. You'll understand why in a minute. Now I activate one of the modulators belonging to the resonance parameter. To the right of the resonance knob we find a knob called RR, in full text Filter Resonance LFO Range. It is set to 0 right now. I change that and the resonance is modulated by its personal LFO. The center value is that one I adjusted with the RC knob with the knob I called resonance parameter, but Ommarunn calls it filter resonance LFO center. I don't like the speed of the LFO, its frequency. I change that using the RF knob, which adjusts the frequency of the LFO. Its full text name is Filter Resonance LFO Frequency Multiplier. Isn't it a nice and tiny name? Well, but it tells everything important about that knob. RS. There is a knob called RS next to the LFO frequency knob. RS, in full text, Filter Resonance LFO Smoothing Multiplier. I change the LFO type from a sine to a square and demonstrate what RS does. It smoothes the edges of the LFO's wave. It smoothes the rapid changes of the sound caused by the square wave LFO. We have discovered a very important principle. If we want to handle Ommarunn in a more classical, more conventional way by just tweaking its parameters, for example the filter resonance, manually, we adjust the knobs, which names usually end with the word center, to the wanted values and leave the modulations at 0 by turning down the knobs, which names end with the word range, and which are usually right next to the main parameter knob. With that new knowledge we can go and modulate the filter's cut-off frequency, but I turn down the resonance modulation at first. I'm going to turn it up again later, but I want to adjust a nice cut-off modulation for now and don't want to be disturbed by a singing resonance. But now for the cut-off modulation. The responsible knobs are called FC, what is filter frequency LFO center, FR, what is filter frequency LFO range, FF, what is filter frequency LFO frequency multiplier, and FS, what is filter frequency LFO smoothing multiplier. I want to correct a kind of, let me call it, uncleanliness in our systematical approach to Ommarunn before I really start modulating the filter's cutoff frequency. I compare FC with the formally adjusted TR knob. We discover that both knobs affect the cutoff frequency. Of course they do. We knew it already with TR, what is filter pitch track, and according to the recently discovered principle also FC, filter frequency LFO center, should affect the filter's cutoff frequency, and it does, as we see and hear. I'll talk about the filter pitch track in detail in a later video, but we see and hear that the effect of the FC knob is bigger, therefore, and because it is according to our discovered principle, I adjust TR to its default value of 50% again, and adjust the filter frequency LFO center to a value that leads to a cutoff frequency which I like. But now for the modulation of the cutoff frequency at last. I adjust the range of the frequency of the modulating LFO to values that sound good to me. After reducing the smoothing of the wave, which doesn't have such a remarkable effect with the sine wave, I changed the LFO's waveform to square and reduced the LFO's frequency a bit. Now I activate the modulation of the filter's resonance again and play around with the adjustments until I have a sound I like. At last, I refine the result by adding reverb to it and play some chords. Well, this is only the first tutorial about Ommarunn in my series. It's just an overview, so let me just show all the oscillator knobs which we have talked about so far and change the matter to quite different kinds of modulations. But you should have got it by now. Having an individual and independent modulating LFO for every single parameter of every of the 6 oscillators and every of the 5 generators gives us an unbelievably wide range of possibilities to design the sounds we want. I click Init to start with a brand new patch from scratch. I activate oscillator 1 and choose the sine wave generator. I want to tune it, but nothing. And it is the same with amplitude modulation, phase modulation and frequency modulation. The synth doesn't react to any of these. We find the answer to this problem in the section called Global next to the center message display on top of the VST. The modulations amplitude modulation, phase modulation and frequency modulation have to be globally activated as well as the oscillator's tuning function. To activate the tuning function, we have to click on the GP button. To activate the 3 modulation modes, we have to increase the GMM wheel. Let me reset the tuning first. Alright, it works. Now for the modulations. I choose oscillator 2 as the modulator and tune it to an octave up. Then I activate amplitude, phase and frequency modulation, but oh, still no modulating, still no modulation going on. I activate oscillator 2, still nothing, no modulation, even if I have the GMM wheel in the global section set to maximum? Well, of course not. I have activated oscillator 2, what isn't even necessary, but I have not chosen a generator. All of the generators of oscillator 2 are set to 0 yet. I activate the sine wave generator and, at last, oscillator 2 modulates oscillator 1. The modulating oscillator, here oscillator 2, doesn't have to be activated. The activate at the top right of every oscillator determines whether the oscillator's output is sent to the main audio output or not, but it doesn't influence the oscillator's activities as a modulator in the patch. I'm not going to talk about more details about the oscillators in this first overview tutorial, nor will I talk about the 3 modulation methods in general today. These matters shall be, in detail, dealt with in later videos, later in this series about Ommarunn. And even all the other sections like MIDI, envelope, the effects and output math are doomed to meet the same fate today. I think I've given you all the basic and necessary information to make your own first steps and enter the realm of Ommarunn on your own. There is a lot more about this VST, a lot more than you may be able to guess right now, and I'm going to talk about it all. But for today, I want to mention only 2 more things concerning the handling of Ommarunn. First, if you want to reset a parameter, and only this single parameter, to its default value, then just hold Ctrl on the computer keyboard, on the PC keyboard, and left-click this parameter. And then there are the random functions, which we find at different levels concerning the individual parts of Ommarunn. To randomize each parameter, in other words, the whole synth, use the RND button right to the main display. But be patient. It takes a while until the VST has calculated all parameters. And it is really randomly done. You never know what you get and, well, the resulting sound may not be too useful for you, for your current needs. It may sometimes be more effective to randomize only a certain part of Ommarunn, like a certain effect or only a certain oscillator. And I have to say it again, there is a lot more to think about concerning Ommarunn's random functionality, and it will be thought about, all of it, thought, talked, and experimented. But for now, I thank you for watching. There is a website of mine at www.rofil-media.net, where you will find more information about this series of tutorials. And you will also find an overview about all things I'm currently working on there, including all 4 of my YouTube channels. There is also a forum there, the Deep Sound Divers Coffeehouse, where you can discuss my videos. And by the way, this is the place where I announce things first. Have a great day and a good time. Enjoy your life. Rolf.